Hello guys, today inshallah we are going to have active and passive voice. Before getting started, we have to review something about subjects of sentences. What is the subject of the sentence? And how can we identify the subject of a sentence? The subject of the sentence will always be noun or pronoun. The subject tells who or what the sentence is about. Means the doer of the action. To find the subject, ask who or what is doing something, or about whom or what is something being said. Try to find the subject in these sentences. Joey arrived late for the dance. Ask yourself, who arrived late? Joe. Excellent. Joe is a subject because he did the verb. Madeleine Albright was appointed Secretary of State. Ask yourself, who was appointed Secretary of State? Madeleine Albright. So Madeleine Albright is the subject, is a doer. Accepting the award was Lucular. Accepting the award was Lucular. Who is the subject here? Of course, Lucular. Several of the players hit home runs. Who is the subject here? Excellent. Several of the players. Peanut butter is my favorite snack. And peanut butter is my favorite snack. What is your favorite snack? Peanut butter. So it is the subject. Now that we have reviewed the subjects, what is the difference between these two sentences? Pay attention. J.K. Rowling wrote the Harry Potter series. The second sentence, the Harry Potter series was written by J.K. Rowling. Could you tell me the difference between these two sentences? The first sentence is active, and the second sentence is passive. Why? Because J.K. Rowling is the doer of the action who wrote the Harry Potter series. The sentence here begins with the subject, the doer of the action, so it's active sentence. But in the second sentence, the Harry Potter series was written by J.K. Rowling. Here it's passive. Why? Because the sentence begins with the receiver of the verb, the object. Look at these two sentences. Voldemort attacked Harry, Ron, and Hermione. The second sentence, Harry, Ron, and Hermione were attacked by Voldemort. So here, the first sentence is, stop the video and answer. Very good. It's active. Why? Because it begins with the subject, the doer of the action. The second sentence is passive. Why? Because it begins with the receiver, the object of the sentence. Verbs and voice. Voice is the form of the verb text to indicate whether the subject of the verb performs or receives the action. We have to determine whether the subject of the verb forms or receives the action. There are two types of voice in which every sentence is written: active voice and passive voice. Let's start with the active voice. Active voice indicates that the subject of the verb is the one doing the action. When you find that the subject is doing the action, it's what we call active voice. Because the subject does or acts upon the verb in such sentences, the sentences are said to be in the active voice. Active voice. Look at these examples. These examples show that the subject is doing the verb's action. For example, the dog dumped it onto the boy. The dog dumped it onto the boy. Here, what dumped the dog? So it begins with the subject. So it's an active voice. But the dog is doing, look at this, the dog is doing the jumping. The dog is doing the jumping. So the dog here is the subject. It's an active sentence. The dog jumped onto the boy. This sentence is active because the dog, which is the subject, which is doing the verb, which is jumping, this is active. Christy will give a book report to the class. Who will give the book report to the class? Christy. So Christy is the subject, so it's active. Christy, which is the subject, is doing the giving verb. The computer ate my paper. The computer ate. So computer here is the subject. Is doing the eating, which is a verb. So it's an active sentence. But look at the passive voice. In a passive voice sentences, the subject and object flip-flop. The subject becomes the passive recipient of the action. Because the subject is being acted upon or is passive, such sentences are said to be in the passive voice. Passive voice. These examples show the subject being acted upon by the verb. The boy was jumped on by the dog. The boy was jumped on by the dog. The boy here is the subject, was being jumped on. It's doing over the receiver, the recipient. So this is passive. A book report will be given by Christy to the class. A book report, subject here, will be given, will be done. So it's passive. The report is the recipient. It's passive. My paper was eaten by the computer. The paper, the subject was being eaten is a verb. Wait, let's review that. What's an active voice? What's a passive voice? An active voice is the subject of the sentence is one doing the action of the verb. Voldemort attacked Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Who attacked Voldemort? So the subject is doing the verb, so it's active. But the passive voice, the subject of the sentence changes. Now the subject of the sentence is not doing the action, but receiving the action of the verb. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were attacked by Voldemort. The beginning of the sentence, Harry, Ron, and Hermione were being attacked. The action is being done. The action is done. Here, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are the recipient. So it's passive. Okay, so why does this matter? Most of the time when you write, you will want to write in active voice. Sometimes you may write in passive voice accidentally, but you will need to be able to identify passive voice and be able to change it to active voice. Reasons to use the active voice. Why do we use the active voice? Most writers prefer to use active voice because it's more direct. Compare. The waiter dropped the tray of food. The waiter dropped. So the doer is the waiter. So it's an active sentence. Change it to passive. The tray of food was dropped. Here we begin with the recipient, with the object, which is the tray, and use verb to be. Verb to be. Verb to be according to the tense. Here we have past, so we use was or were. The tray of food was dropped by the waiter. Reasons to use the active voice. The active voice is less awkward and it clearly states relationship between subject and action. Compare. Your request for funding has been denied by the review committee. Is it active or passive? Oh, your request for funding has been denied. So, this is the object. Your request for funding, this is the object. The recipient. So, this is passive. But the review committee denied your request for funding. The review committee is the doer, so it's active. The active voice sentence pattern people the reader forward through your writing, thus avoiding weak prose. Sometimes you need passive voice. In general, the passive voice is less direct, less forceful, and less concise than the active voice. Use the passive voice in the following situations. Use passive voice when you do not know or do not want to reveal the performer of the action. Use the passive voice when you want to emphasize the receiver of action. Examples. Awkward passive. My bicycle was repainted by Joe. This is awkward passive. Deliberate passive. My bicycle was repainted. The performer is not mentioned and the emphasis is on the bicycle. How to identify the passive voice? You need to know how to identify passive voice in your writing so that you can change it into active voice. Look at the verb forms. Form of to be plus PP past participle. Try the boy test. Look at the verbs. Look at the verb form. Sentence in the passive voice will have a double verb that consists of a form of the verb to be and the past participle, usually the en, ed, or t form. For example, John baked the bread. John is the subject, is the doer, so this is passive. But when I want to change it into passive, I begin with the recipient, the receiver, the object, which is the bread. But here we have to use verb to be. Is or was were. Here it's past, but we use was or were. But the bread, very good, was baked by John. Was is a form of the verb be. Look at the verb form. Passive voice. Form of to be plus past participle of main verb. Review of forms of to be. What are forms of to be? Very good. Is, are, was, were, be, being, or being. Past participle as ed or d or t or en or n. For example, walked, burned or burned, eaten, given. These are the past participle. The boy test. Often passive voice sentences will contain a phrase beginning with the preposition by to indicate who is doing the action of the verb. If there is not a prepositional phrase beginning with by, see if you can add one. And at the beginning of the sentence, you can use the generic phrase by the man. But for example, the dog was groomed by Mr. Wolf, by somebody. The cat was bad. Let's practice. These sentences will be a homework. Until we meet again, thank you and goodbye.